Hello and welcome to there I go screwing it up. Hello and welcome to TNA Top 10 for week 8 of the college football season. And I didn't even have the graphics up there when we came back. I was this close to having it right this time.
Drinking out of your new glass.
I am, and I just unmuted you so I could get the last half of that sentence.
Are you drinking out of your new glass?
I am. It's got my AU logo on there, and it says Terry. I know you can't see it on the camera very well, and this reverse angle thing's really throwing me off. Maybe you can see it now,
It'll mess you up in a minute, won't it?
but it's white, so it's hard to see. But that is a gift from Andrew for my birthday. I am several decades and a half old, so figure that one out on your own.
I just bought it because he needed to look more professional on the show with his
Yeah.
name and everything. Like I need to
Yeah,
get a coffee mug with my name or something.
yeah, it's great. Thank you, sir.
No, you're welcome. I just wonder how many times it's been refilled tonight. That's all. That's the real
Um,
number people care about, sir.
It's been and let me tell you, I'm watering the stuff down. I'm not, like, slamming shots over here. I'm sipping.
Yeah,
Um,
watering it down. He meant he had 2 ice cubes and the glass filled at the top. That's what that means. 2 ice cubes, glass filled at the top. Because he keeps the
this is
liquor in
my
the
second
freezer.
one
The
per show.
ice cubes are just for optics, especially when dealing with me. That's what he meant to say. There's the
Well,
ice
let me tell
cube.
you, I've needed some alcohol lately because let me tell you something I like about college football these days. Um, I like maps, right?
Yes. I have a map of Huntsville or of Tuscaloosa, thanks to you.
That's right, that was a gift for you, yes.
Yes.
So I enjoy maps and I enjoy college football. Well, there's a map that gets published weekly these days. I'm not sure who actually does it. I see it all around. It's called the College Football Imperialism Map. So for those that don't know what that means, at the start of the year, everybody owns the little bit of land. Thank you for the 25th birthday. Happy birthday there, Alex. You're a little bit off. But anyway, um, so everybody starts with the closest counties around their university. And when you start playing people, whoever wins gains your land, and it's imperialism. Go Google it, figure out what that means. You're invading other territories and you're winning their land. So apparently, this is a concept that college football fans cannot follow very well. And I have been in the comments for days trying to explain it. Last week, I said there are no such thing as Miami fans. Well, that is not correct because I talked to several of them because they were wondering why they didn't own any land in California. So I had to run it all down for them. It's like California didn't own the land when you beat them, stupid. So you didn't win anything. And then there were some Texas fans upset that Texas Tech had a bunch of land in South Texas. Same thing. People just don't get it, but I love it. So, and I looked for the updated version of that. And I was going to show it on the screen, but whoever does that has not updated it yet. We're recording Sunday this time. I imagine if we were recording Monday, I'd be able to do that. So I might show it next week if we record Monday.
Yes, because we are a day early, which means the poll closed a day early, but we certainly appreciate everybody who
Yeah.
participated in our top 10 poll because, as has become commonplace, the mighty have fallen again. And obviously, we're going to get into it, Terry.
We are.
Um, but Army, Navy, Vandy, top 25,
All of them. 23,
all of them.
24, and 25.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's insanity. Also,
Vandy did beat Alabama, so, that's
well, we're gonna get there because I've got a couple comments about the latest poll, and maybe it does. I think that they're really, really smashing people on these losses. The the Alabama loss to Tennessee we're gonna talk about, but this is what I'll say: it was 7 points to a very good football team in their stadium, and Alabama fell 8 spots.
that's the thing that always gets me. If number 2 plays number 3 and number 2 beats number 3, why is number 3 dropping?
To number 10, as an
No, no,
example.
no. Yeah, so, like, why would that happen? I
Yeah.
mean, shouldn't that be what you expect? I mean, if they barely beat them, like the Oregon-Ohio State, why would Ohio State drop very far
And
after
they
beating
didn't. They
Purdue?
dropped to 5, I think.
So
But
that's
I'm just saying they dropped 7 or 8 full spots. And
right.
Tennessee and Alabama, if you remember, were ranked right on top of each other. It was a
Yes.
one-score football game, which again we're going to get into. Also have a couple comments about the Texas Georgia game. So I guess we better get this party started. I do want to note first major institution, at least I think of the season, fires their coach. East Carolina University, 3-4 start. He's gone. So he has been let go. Um, the head coaching carousel begins, Terry, because that,
Well,
of course, has implications for recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, and coaching jobs.
it does, and, this is just fans with rumors, but they're already starting the rumors at Auburn that money's being moved around. I can't see it. I mean,
While we're on the topic, because it's our show, as I make that joke every week. Thank you, James El Karai. Shout out. This is our show. What is Freeze's contract? Do you remember?
I don't, honestly. I don't know.
Rule is getting
It's
paid
not very much.
Rule at Nebraska is getting paid $7.5 or $8 million. Now we're going to get to Nebraska, believe me,
Yeah,
folks.
right.
And he's apparently in the middle of the Big Ten. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
Freeze is not on the top of any lists as
at
far as
$8 million, you're in the middle.
well,
you
and
know,
that's the thing, because I mean, obviously, it was a pretty controversial hire for Auburn. This is kind of a second chance kind of deal for him. So, he was seen as a good football coach that had done some stupid stuff and kind of had to rehab and come back, and that's why you don't get the money up front. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But why don't we
yeah,
get it on the road, like you said, and see what we can start out with from this week? Why don't we just hit it hard right here? Georgia at Texas. Georgia put it on them. 30-15 win. Um, just had them the whole game.
with 3 turnovers.
Yeah. Turnovers all over the place.
Georgia wins 30-15, committing 3 turnovers and forcing 4. They made so this is my comment on Georgia's defense because this is really and this is a thing that I think everybody needs to consider when we're talking about top 10 football, top 5 football. This is a fast, aggressive, experienced, well-disciplined defense, and they proved it. Their quarterback offense turned the ball over 3 times, 3 interceptions on Saturday night against Texas. Texas's defense came to ball, they came to play, but Georgia's defense nullified everything that Texas did defensively to that offense of Georgia. Carson Beck throwing 3 interceptions, Terry, incredible. 3 interceptions for Georgia. But the linebacker play, the defensive line, the pressure packages, they were all over Quinn Ewers. And when Arch Manning had his chance, they were all over him too. Georgia's defense, big, fast, mean, and aggressive, probably the best all around defense in the SEC. And I don't think it's close. I just don't. Like from a playing standpoint, they look like NFL players
So,
when you see Georgia's defense.
do you think Georgia has a little bit of playing to their competition going on? Because obviously they had the 1 point game with Kentucky, and they beat Auburn pretty well, but the score was bigger than the actual game was. Um, then they got the loss. Um, do you
But the
think that
loss to Alabama, Alabama jumped out on them 28
right?
points, and they came roaring back and
Yeah,
forced it to a last-minute touchdown, and they committed 3 turnovers in that game too. So Georgia is not executing on offense. I had said Carson Beck looks like he's going to have a quiet season, should be the guy who they could consider for a Heisman Trophy. They're not going to consider a guy that turns the ball over 3 times a game, Terry, as a Heisman Trophy winner. He's not
right.
going to win that award. He's not protecting the ball. But again, Georgia defense is nullifying the impact of turning the ball over. When we talk about Nebraska, that did not happen. Texas also paid for it. Now, here's the comment on the Texas game. Very physical, Georgia defense. But they got 2 targeting calls in the second half, and that means for the first half of the Florida game in 2 weeks, they don't have those defensive players. That's huge. So being physical and being aggressive does have its consequences if you get called for that targeting penalty. The other thing, the holding call that was overturned. We all agreed in the group chat it was not holding.
Right.
Here's where I have the problem with it. When the fans started throwing the drinks on the field, that's when they decided it was no longer holding.
Right.
Well, they have the right to talk about it. What I get that. You got bullied into making that call, and that was Kirby Smart's point. He said, so now all of a sudden, if the fans start throwing things, we're going to change or reverse the play, reverse the call, because instead of it being an interception, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
or it ends up being a or I guess was it an interception for Texas?
Yeah, it
Yes,
was.
it was an
Yeah.
interception for Texas. Rather than be a holding and a 10-yard penalty for Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
Texas intercepts the ball, runs it back, and they set up on the 9. Now, granted, the defense of Georgia held Texas to 15 points, but that led to a touchdown, which was Kirby Smart's point. Referees, once again, instrumental in the outcome of the football game.
So
I
here's my
agree
deal.
it wasn't holding. I
Right.
don't agree with the way we got there.
So, okay, you spoke to the aspect of now what does that teach the fans? Throw shit on the field and maybe you'll get the call charge. That is a real thing. That's a real concern. The aspect for me is we continue to hear we can't review that play. Well, that's an unreviewable play, and don't they don't even consider changing the call until now. So does that mean in the future we're going to have a huddle? I mean, how many times does one of the referees on some part of the field know that another referee screwed up, and since it's not a reviewable play, they just let it go?
You see it all the
But
time on the end zone. You got the referee right there, not call the touchdown, and the guy from 25 yards away
yeah,
from the play on the other end of the sideline is calling the touchdown. It's crazy. It's
if
crazy.
they start doing that more often, if they start huddling up and talking about it and changing it more often, then maybe that's okay. But if the only reason they ever do that is the fans disrupt the game, then we can't do it that way.
Well, and
Makes
I
no
will say
sense.
this. I've said it. You know, I'm very high on Steve Sarkisian.
Yes.
Obviously, the man went to Alabama rehabilitated after the Washington stint with the alcohol and all that nonsense. Forget all that. Dude was a class act Saturday night telling those fans to settle down and pleading with them to quit throwing stuff on the field. Because quite frankly, somebody's going to get hurt and or you're delaying the game, you know, and all of these things, it's not good. And now, in case you didn't know, Terry, because I don't know how much of the news you read this morning, Texas fined $250,000 by the SEC for that.
Okay.
The University of Texas has to pay a $250,000 fine and may or may not have their alcohol privileges either suspended and or investigated under review.
That's interesting. I think there was two. I saw something the other day. You talk about the alcohol privileges because um, there's two SEC teams that still don't serve alcohol at the stadium, and I believe it's Auburn and Georgia of all teams.
Yeah, so the Ole Miss game, forget who got fined. Oh, it was Tennessee. Tennessee got fined because they were throwing shit like batteries at Lane Kiffin and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's
That
no
yeah,
good.
yeah. So guys, act like freaking fan. That's horrible. Don't do that nonsense. There's no excuse for it. No
And the
excuse
thing is, a
whatsoever.
bad call. I mean, we hate it. I don't care how serious the game is. It is not the end of the world, even for that game.
Mm-mm. No. And it's one play inside of 120.
Right.
So,
Back to the thought of baseball, I think I saw a graphic the other day where um, Major League Baseball umpires missed 27,000 strike and ball calls this year, and that's the best season they've ever had.
yeah. Yeah.
It happens.
Speaking of baseball, Dodgers just home run 4-1. What's our next game, Terry?
Our next game, staying in the
Oh my
SEC,
God.
we're kind of grouping them. We got Alabama and Tennessee, and they were
Whew!
happy on Rocky Top,
Man,
24-17
they're smoking them
Tennessee.
cigars. Josh Heupel finally got the win. Well, I guess he got the win a couple years ago against Alabama. I can't say
He did,
finally,
yeah.
but he hasn't beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa, if I'm not mistaken. They have because
Right.
they've only
They're
won one
smart.
of the last 10 or something. So, and that was in Tennessee.
Oh,
But
they had
anyway,
a big, they had a big winning streak against them, and
Saban showed up. Yeah, that
they
happens.
keep talking about Tennessee being Alabama's biggest rival and all that stuff. And I always said that's because they beat them every year. But that's we won't get into that right
Jalen Milroe, 2 turnovers, game deciding turnover, threw the interception. 3 intercept or for Tennessee. Tennessee looked horrible in the first half. Very lucky to win the game, but obviously Heifel makes the adjustments. 100 yards different in offense. And Alabama can ball. They got the receivers, they got the quarterback, they got the running back. They
now.
can ball.
75 yards rushing though.
But
Tennessee didn't let it go on the ground.
that defensive front of Tennessee, they came to play. And look at what else that stat says. Speaking of the rushing line, forget the passing. Everybody in college can throw the ball. Alabama gives up 220 yards
Well, look
of
at the next game.
rushing.
I don't know if everybody can pass the ball.
220 yards of rushing, Terry. That's incredible for the defense of
Yeah,
Alabama to give up that many yards.
it is. And look
And
at
it
the
was
penalties. I
it was a
mean,
dirty game. I was just going to say 26 total penalties, over 200 yards, 220 it looks like if I did the math there.
yeah,
I didn't do the math there, 210.
210.
But anyway, that's horrible. That's like watching that Nebraska Purdue game that didn't have these type of implications. When you
Right.
got that many penalties, it ruins the game. Like the tempo's not there. And then if you're the fan watching the game, and then of course the coaches are just working the hell out of the referees on both sides of the stadium. So yeah, Alabama, not what I expected this year, to be quite frank, considering they had all those players. But I mean, somebody's got to lose. And good win for Tennessee. Whether you like it or not, it's a good win and a season win for Tennessee.
So what these two games that we've talked about tell me is there is no top of the SEC right now. There's a collection of several teams that are battling that out at the top. We got Texas, we got Alabama, we got Tennessee, we got Georgia. Ole Miss is sitting there. They've got a couple of losses. They're going to keep showing up. Texas A&M is sitting at the top of the standings all of a sudden. There's a lot of teams. I always talked about Alabama and Georgia being at the top, and then there's a big group. I think that whole group is all the way at the top now. Georgia and Alabama have been gobbled up by it, and they're just beating each other up. But it's a
Yep.
good time for that to happen because the 12-team playoff is starting this year. So you don't have to have those superstar teams at the top. You can get a few teams in and see what happens in the playoffs. They're going to beat each other up throughout the season. And when the playoff comes, who knows what happens? But it's really exciting. We got the same kind of thing in the Big 12. We talked about that in the Big 12, not really knowing who's going to take over. The SEC is in the same boat. We thought Texas was going to do it, but obviously they're not.
Well, and the thing is Texas ran into a buzzsaw, that Georgia defense.
Yeah,
And I mean, regardless, no one has ever accused Kirby Smart of not being able to get a good defense out of Georgia.
right.
That's never been an issue, and it
He's
never
a
will be an
defensive
issue.
guy. Yeah,
That's his thing. But you're right. There's 4 or 5 teams in the and they could all be in the playoff for all that matters.
right.
Um, who's up next, Terry?
Well, unfortunately, we got Auburn at Missouri, and if you look at these quarter scores, Auburn was up 17-6 going into the fourth quarter and lost again. And I think there were 47 seconds left when Missouri took the lead. And this is just heartbreaking. Every single week, Auburn plays, the defense plays well, keeps them in it, and something happens, and the offense just cannot put points on the board. And they give up, and the defense is tired at that point, and they give something up at the end. And here it is, 21-17 at Missouri. Now, there's a little bit different twist this week we talked about because Missouri's quarterback uh, is injured in the first quarter,
Brady
goes to the
Cook.
hospital. Brady
Yeah.
Cook, thank you. I
Yep.
kept thinking Carson Beck. So he goes to the hospital and it looks like he's just not going to come back. He comes back and mounts a comeback in the fourth quarter, and they win. That's champ of the week if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, and he went to the hospital and was there for 2 quarters of the game and was listed as unlikely to return and comes back clutch for your number 20 Missouri Tigers that have 1 loss.
Right.
Talk about teams that got dropped, Terry. They were in the top 10 and now they're in the top 20. So,
But as an Auburn fan, you got to wonder what happens next. Every week, it's like there's just no confidence in this because you see for 3 quarters, Auburn owns this game.
and I had the game on at work, so I was able to catch some of it. Had a special team blocked punt for a
Yeah,
touchdown. Great play. The
right.
defense is really quick, really fast for
They
Auburn.
are.
No
And they're
run
young.
game.
They're
No,
young and good. A good combination for the future.
I say no run game. You ran 100 yards, but not
Right.
not the old school Auburn run game. That you
No.
leaned on.
And Jarquez Hunter is supposed to be, preseason, he was voted by the coaches as the best running back in the conference. He hasn't done it. And even when he has the yards, he fumbles a lot, and that's not helping anything.
No, and like you say, you got 1 turnover versus 2. I mean, you won the turnover margin.
Mhm.
You won the possession margin. You 4th and 14 on 3rd down though, not great. But
Not good.
that might be going to what's his name from Michigan State, your quarterback, not being able to convert on 3rd down,
Peyton Thorne, yeah, there was a 47-yard touchdown pass to the true freshman Cam Coleman. So, um,
Yeah.
you know,
The
that was
problem
good.
is the problem is, and goodness, the Dodgers just hit another 2-run homer. This thing getting busted open, Terry. We're in the bottom of the 3rd, and it's 6-1
So go ahead,
Dodgers.
mark it up, Dodgers, Yankees.
Yeah, bring me Otani. But no, seriously, the problem is you got a coach who had to come in after Brian Herson.
Hard,
Terrible,
yeah,
or Harson. Terrible
yeah,
hire for Auburn. Terrible. But he's a coach that's got baggage anyway.
right.
And he's supposed to win football games and be this great offensive mind. And he's not winning football games. And he's had several games where his offense has cost his team the football game with a
Yeah,
failure to execute, or in a couple of those games, Terry, just turnovers, just flat out not taking care of the ball. And you can't necessarily say that's inexperience when you look at the age of the quarterback
right,
and that sort of thing. But to your other point, you got the best running back in the whole conference can't hold the ball. Well, he's
right,
not the best running back in the conference then.
exactly. Well, my deal is, and I hate to be this way, but I think Hugh Freeze made a mistake with his thought that he had at least a good enough quarterback for this season. They are worse than they were last year. The record, at least.
Yeah.
Because the defense lost a lot in the secondary, so they had to get some young guys, and they're playing well. But the offense hasn't been as good as it was last year, even with bringing in all the weapons at wide receiver.
Yep.
The message last year was Peyton Thorne was too conservative. He didn't turn the ball over. They tried to air it out more this year. They got a lot of yards, but he turned the ball over. His top end is just not where it needs to be. The problem is there's nobody on the roster right now whose top end is good enough. And that is a coach recruiting problem. My deal, and I'm going to give him a mulligan. That's all I can do. This year is a mulligan for Hugh Freeze, but you better figure it out for next year because the excuses are getting old.
Well, and realistically, Auburn is a 4-8 team.
Yeah, they
Five
are.
and seven.
They are
Five
what
and
we thought.
seven.
They are what we thought Florida was going to be.
Yep. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because you expect in year 2 improvement.
Right.
And we're gonna get there with Nebraska, I promise. Who's next, Terry? Where are
All
we
right.
going?
We're going to change conferences and we're going to go to the ACC. And there was a shootout in Louisville.
There's a
Miami with
basketball
another
game.
win. Another win for Miami. They're undefeated, but they're not dominating anybody.
Week 3, in a row of the referees influencing the outcome of a Miami game. This is no bullshit. Louisville sacked Cam Ward. They said it was a forward pass, but Louisville had scooped and scored. They had picked the ball up and run it to the end zone. It got called a touchdown, reversed. This time I agree with the call. So the referees are 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 they got right for Miami. But we have a preview coming up for who they're playing next week. And our buddy is going to be licking some wounds because there is one thing Miami can do. They may not defend worth a shit, but they can put some points and they can put some yards up. They play fast football down in Miami, Terry.
They do.
Fast football.
And they,
I saw
I
part
mean,
of this game, and there is no defense from either Louisville or Miami. Just
no,
none. And you're like, yeah, Andrew, they scored 97 points. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, it didn't even look like there was an effort for defense at times. I mean, this was a very, very fast. And you look at that lopsidedness, 10 minutes times of possession with offenses that scored like this, and Louisville only lost by 7. That shows you how tight this game was.
Miami was 9 of 15 third down.
Yep.
Getting
And
it done.
And the penalty count was pretty good for both teams. And look at that balance attack for Miami. 200 yards rushing. That you would think is a good enough to beat anybody with what their
Right.
offensive production was. So, but I don't like Miami, so we'll move on.
All right, let's move out of the ACC and go to the Big 12. And the mullet almost stopped the undefeated season for BYU, but it didn't quite happen. BYU ends up with a win 38-35.
There are several teams we've overlooked in our preview. BYU is one of them. We've factored them into the middle of the
They
pack.
keep winning.
They kept winning, and they came from behind in this one, and they stole it from Oklahoma
Yes.
State because Oklahoma State should have had it. And look at this game, Terry. 3 penalties for a total of 20 yards between both teams. Now, they had 5 turnovers, but only 3 penalties. And
Both
BYU,
teams ran the hell out of the ball.
yeah, BYU getting it done. I mean, yeah, and there's no run defense apparently on either side of the football. But 9 for 13 third down, 5 for 10 third down. I mean, this is just another offensive outing. This is what you expect when you watch Big 12 football. But the points don't always register because then you have either a penalty or you have a fumble or you have a interception or something. Oklahoma State had no right to piss this game away because they were up big at halftime thanks to those
Right.
three turnovers. They come out, BYU did second half, and they did their deal. They played their game. They won the football game, and that's all there is to that, you know.
I'm
And
really
they look
interested in
like
the Big 12 to see who
they
comes out of this with it.
they look like a front runner to win the whole thing.
Right, they do. And then
So,
there's a playoff bye waiting on them.
yep. And they might get crushed by whoever that is. But
It's possible. Who knows? Who knows?
But anyway, that's a fun game. Yeah.
But let's move along to another game in the Big 12. And 38-35 was a popular score this week.
Another come from behind. Iowa State came back in the last minute of the game to take it from Gus. Winning
Look
a game.
At the stats here.
Winning a game he should have lost. This is one of those, Terry, where there's games Gus Malzahn should win and he loses, and games he has no business playing in and nearly win. That's this one right here. Iowa State looked like trash. Go ahead, the stats. Look at the time of possession.
Earlier.
Yeah.
62 passing yards for Gus, 354 rushing yards. This is like Nick Marshall playing at Auburn where they just don't pass the ball at all. 350 rushing yards.
Well, and you look at it, the turnovers again, even, but look at that time of possession, 15 minutes in favor of Iowa State.
How do you run the ball for 350 and get beaten that much in time of possession? I guess he's chewing that bubble gum and saying, "Get to the line, get to the line."
Yeah. I mean, they have to be doing hurry up. I didn't watch this game except for the ending, but Iowa State stole it again inside of 2 minutes from Malzahn and UCF.
Well, his defense is probably exhausted by that point.
Yeah, and you look at the balance attack Matt Campbell has at Iowa State, excuse me. Look at that. 530, 274, 256. Terry, it doesn't get too much
Crazy.
better than that.
2
And the
penalties for 10 yards.
least penalized team in the entire country, 134 teams. Iowa State is the least penalized team. You know what that means? They don't make mistakes. They play clean football. Do you know what clean football means? That you don't get big runs called back for holding, or you
That's
don't get
right.
pass interference. Those things that change games. Now,
And I
6
think
for
it means
19
we
on
need to give
third
them a
down.
little more respect when we start voting for rankings here because Iowa State's getting it done.
They made my top 10. Don't mind telling everybody. So,
Well, we'll see if they made the official top 10.
yep.
But why don't we move out of the Big 12 and let's go to the Big 10, where the first game we talk about is USC at Maryland. And USC, Maryland comes back in the fourth quarter to win this one 29-28.
In the last 90 seconds, SC goes for a field goal, gets the field goal blocked. Maryland takes the possession, quarterback gets the job done, runs it in from like, I want to say maybe 11 yards out, maybe. I don't remember. But it was a short run. It wasn't like a big long run, but he was inside the red zone. Mike Loxley gets it done. And Lincoln Riley once again loses at SC. They are now 3-4. They have a
Man,
losing record at University of Southern California. And this
goodness.
gives me hope for Nebraska because SC's on the schedule at the Coliseum in November. So we'll see what that looks like coming in this particular season at the end here. So because they're
I
the
think
second or
USC's getting
third
worse
game.
as the season goes.
Yeah, well, everybody's figuring them out, and the problem is if you can play defense, you can stop USC. You can
Oh, that's
stop
why LSU could. Okay.
LSU. Minnesota beat them. I mean, come on, Minnesota. But anyway,
All
stranger
right.
things have happened.
Let's move elsewhere in the Big Ten. And we've got
Oh my God,
Nebraska at Indiana. And why don't you go ahead and take it here? Because I know this is not pleasant.
that wasn't football. Is the headline. So Indiana scored on 8 offensive possessions, all touchdowns. They scored 28 in the first, 28 in the second. It is the epitome of balance. Cognetti had the Kirk Cognetti, whatever Cognetti had the line. Look, Google me. I went everywhere. He
Yeah.
does. Nebraska showed up flat. They didn't come to play. You look at their line, other than the 304 total. There's not a lot of egregious things there till you get to the turnovers.
Right.
Nebraska has been so good protecting the football. Dylan Raiola threw 3 interceptions, fumbled the ball twice. 4 of those 5 turnovers ended up in Indiana points. You don't win. I've said it. Everybody going to get me a T-shirt that says you don't win football games when you turn the ball over, because
Right.
that's what I say every single week. This is why I say this every single week. For a decade, I have watched Nebraska lose games because they turn the ball over. So this is, to me, what happened in this Nebraska game, to me, is what happened when they used to play Wisconsin with Monty Ball and Melvin Gordon
Hmm.
and James White.
Rondé.
The Rondé, those running backs used to run the ball all over Nebraska's nickel defense. So Nebraska under Bo Pelini had a fantastic nickel defense that worked if you were going to play spread. But if you were going to play 9 guys on the line of scrimmage, double tight end, running back, run the ball, guess what it didn't do?
Gonna eat you
He's
up.
going to eat you up. And they didn't make adjustments. And Tony White did not adjust to what Indiana was doing.
Okay.
This is just an ass whooping. This is a lopsided goose egg. This is a team loss. Matt Rule apologized for this loss. Okay, that's not good. That is not good
It's not.
when you know it was that bad. You got the head coach of the team apologizing to the people that paid money and the people that took their time to support and watch the football game. Not good. What else isn't good is Ohio State's next in Columbus at 12 o'clock Saturday.
And we
So
will talk
hopefully
about that.
we see a bounce back, but this is just an ass whooping. And,
Well,
maybe
let
it's
me
an ass
ask you this.
whooping Nebraska needed. I don't know, because their defense, Terry, couldn't tackle anything Saturday. Not one thing. And they had 1 sack. This defense averaging 6 sacks a game, already having, 20 sacks leading the country, 14 defense in the country, keeping everybody out of the end zone. No rushing touchdowns up to the Indiana game. Indiana had 5 rushing touchdowns. Catastrophic failure from beginning to end. So, and at this year, Mike, that's when they got good at
Yeah, that's
football.
a good
This year.
question. Well, and that's what I was gonna ask a little bit, because obviously your focus is gonna be where does Nebraska go from here? But what, where do we put Indiana at this point? Because they continue to win, and this was impressive, and
So
and
they
it's
got,
because of being tough,
yeah,
right?
they've got Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, Purdue, and I forget who the other one is left on the schedule. They can win all 12 games. Okay, this is not me kissing Indiana's ass. Kanyeti brought in 14 transfers from JMU. That James Madison team that was so good,
Yeah.
they all play for Indiana now. 14 of them
Okay.
play for
Well, that's
Indiana.
why James Madison has a couple of losses already.
Starting quarterback hurt his hand and is out indefinitely. Backup quarterback continued right where he. That's the backup quarterback that put 28 on Nebraska in the second half. The
Okay.
starter was in street clothes in the third quarter. So they got good at football, Bober, this year. That's when they got good at football. It's proof that if you have a vision and a team, you can do it. You got to have the coaching. So Nebraska picked up a really good freshman quarterback, and all of a sudden the turnover started to go away until this game. 3 interceptions, but if you can't run the ball and it's drop back pass, that's what you're going to get.
Yep.
So, because you're just letting them know, hell, we're down. At one point, Nebraska was down 28-7 and 42-7. If you're going to score, what are you going to do? At 42-7, Terry, I wouldn't have even put him in the throwing position. I would have just said, let's run our offense. It's a practice from here on out, guys. Let's finish the game and be competitive. Nebraska doesn't win every football game, but they need to be competitive. That's my thing about them.
Right.
But again, this was just a lopsided ass beating. They got Washington this week. Indiana does. They're gonna play good, tight football. Offensively, they are very, very good, and they could match up, I think, with Ohio State. So you ask where they go. This is a team that I didn't have. I had Nebraska potentially 7-0 going into Columbus.
Right.
They're 5-2. And now we've got the death, the world's falling. Oh, we're not going to make a bowl game. We're going to lose 5 straight. Blah blah blah.
No.
You got Ohio State,
Sounds like
which
Auburn fans saying we're going to lose to Alabama A&M. Yeah, that's right.
Ohio State's a loss. Okay, we get that. I mean, I'm going to say later when we predict them that they're going to win. Nebraska is, but Ohio State is a loss. Probably 3, 4,
Right.
5 scores. It's a loss. Okay,
Going to pick them
but
to win by 1 point. Yeah, I get
pick them to win by 1 point. Actually, a field goal because I'm going to say our kicker that doesn't score is going to score. But then Nebraska plays UCLA, USC, Iowa, and who's the fourth one? I forget. Oh, USC, UCLA. It's USC, UCLA, Iowa, and Wisconsin. 4 winnable games. They can still be
it.
9-3. They can still be 8-4. They could be 7 and
Right.
5. It's still bowl eligible. Moving on with a winning
Still at
season.
least a couple of games better than they've been in a while.
And I grew up when Tom Osborne was Nick Saban winning national championship. He
Right.
went 60-3 the last 5 years, so I get it. The sky is not falling, the world is not over. And you guys saw the group chat. I didn't lose my shit watching them because they got beat. It's when they made no effort to actually play. That's when I lose my shit with my team. And they were horrible Saturday. They didn't get off the bus. That's what they didn't get off the bus. And Indiana still might have beat them, but
Right.
they didn't give them even a fight.
But
So,
show up and make it close. And that's the
yeah,
thing about Auburn is like Auburn's lost some close games. They continue to lose close games. That's what you talked about with Nebraska over the last 10 years,
8 and
continually
31.
losing those
8 and
close
31.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 score games.
But Indiana is in a group of teams that's hard to place right now. Indiana, Iowa State, BYU, several teams that continue to win, continue to be undefeated, but you're like, where do we put them? But there's football to be played, and we're going to figure it out.
Well, and the other thing is, Terry, and I'll just close on this thought because I've read a lot of the Indiana stuff. I really respect what they did to Nebraska. This was a measuring stick. They met the challenge. Nebraska did not. Very simple. Done.
Right.
Over with there. But people are still criticizing Indiana. Well, they don't play anybody. They don't play anybody. They play in the Big Ten,
They're
and
going
they're
to
going to
play
play
some folks.
Washington, and you could forget Nebraska. They're still going to play Washington, Ohio State, Purdue. And
It'll
Purdue,
work itself out
I
eventually.
mean, I think it's unfair to just automatically go to schedule. Not everybody can have an Alabama, Georgia schedule or Texas
Right.
schedule. I mean, that just doesn't work that way. But it's going to be fun to watch and see how they finish. And personally, I'm rooting for Indiana because I like the story.
Yeah,
I just
it's
like the
good.
story.
It's like the football version of Hoosiers.
Yep, exactly.
Let's run down some other games from this week, and we got a new board here. So we got Duke beating Florida State 23-16, and
For the
Florida
first time ever.
first time ever, and Florida State's bad season just keeps getting worse.
And it ain't going to get
And
any better when they play Miami this next weekend. So,
then we got LSU going to Arkansas and thumping them. You know, we thought there might be a chance that this would be a game Arkansas could compete, but they did not.
offense,
LSU might be better than we thought.
offense was ineffective, surprisingly ineffective with Petrino as the OC. So, I thought Arkansas might be able to pull the upset. You
Yeah.
didn't. I did. I thought Arkansas was going to pull an upset because they're good for that, but they didn't do it. Next game
Then
up, Clemson and
Clemson
Virginia
and Virginia was close for a little while, but you know,
sur-
Clemson just has more talent.
surrendered 31 points, though,
Right.
the defense of Clemson. So just keep an eye on that. Notre Dame. Okay, Georgia Tech starting quarterback was out. I think this would have been closer otherwise,
Right.
but
And it started out fairly close, I think, and then they pulled away.
Notre Dame proving it, buddy. They're proving it.
And the defending, I don't think we can say defending anymore because they ain't defended nothing. Michigan gets beat by Illinois 21-7. Illinois is
And
pretty dang
and
good
got
football team.
and got beat up. I mean, they
Yeah.
controlled. This is Brett Bielema. Same thing you did at Wisconsin. They're going to run the ball. They're going to do play action. They're going to play good defense. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes. Look what happens. You
Right.
defeat the team that won the national championship last year. Granted, not even close to the same team. South Carolina, Gamecocks.
This is ugly. Now,
Woo!
they had a close game with Alabama, and then I mean, where did this come from all of a sudden? They just whipped Oklahoma this week.
Mm-hmm. Not even a conversation. And then Michigan State over Iowa.
30,
Iowa
they gave up 40 points, followed by 32 points. What is up with Iowa's defense?
not nearly as good as everybody thought. And last but not least, surprise of the week, in my opinion, Mark Stoops' vaunted defense at UK giving up 48 to Florida and a backup quarterback.
I
Because
don't know. I don't know
your
how to
starter's
rank
out
these
for the
teams.
season. Starter's out for the season.
Goodness. I don't know. As an
Yeah,
Auburn
Mertz.
fan, I'm glad to see
Mertz, is
this.
it? Mertz? Mertz. He's
Yeah,
out for the
Mertz.
season. Yeah.
Right.
So,
But Florida's looking to the future, so maybe they're better than we thought they were.
yeah, I don't know.
He's
Well,
gonna
they're
keep
going to
his
have
job.
some help. They're going to have some help now because they got Florida State too. So they might break 500.
He's not getting fired this year. I'm
No,
blown away, but he is not getting fired this year.
mm-mm. No.
So that was week 8. Thanks everybody for voting. Wanted to run through some scores and not break all of them down by the stats, but a lot of good football, and it's crazy. I mean, every week now we've got rivalry games. We've got teams upsetting teams that shouldn't be. It is really exciting.
And you know what
But
else
let's
is
move.
exciting?
What's that?
The real top 10.
The real top 10. Week 8 top 10. Thanks everybody for voting. And why don't we go ahead and get it started? Number 10, LSU. They had a loss to USC in week 1, but they're rolling now, and they put it on Arkansas at Arkansas. But they got Texas A&M coming up this week, and A&M has kind of not been talked about, but they're sitting at the top of the SEC right now.
Yeah, A&M, Alabama maybe Florida. Vandy can't discredit Vandy. I mean, it's not an easy road out for them. Not
It's
an easy
not.
road out. So, I don't know that LSU is a top 10 team, but they are this week. So,
Right. When I was ranking this, first few teams I felt were pretty solid. When I got down to about 8, 9, 10, there were a collection of teams. You got Notre Dame, you got LSU, you got Texas A&M, you got some of these teams that are just kind of sitting there competing for my votes there. It was very difficult when you got to about 8 or 9
this is
to
what I'll
vote for
say:
teams.
8 through 15, you could make a case for any of them to sit at any
Yeah,
number.
it's true. All right, LSU at number 10. Let's go to number 9, and that is Indiana. I had to create a new page for this one. This is the first time they've shown up for us.
Yep.
7-0. They
And
got
they got
Washington this week.
Washington, and Washington has not been good inside the Big Ten. So we'll see how that goes. And then there it is, Michigan State, a bye, advantageous right before Ohio State, and they close out with Purdue in the in-state rivalry game. So good for Indiana. I will be watching. I want to make sure that it wasn't just a fluke and my team sucks that bad. But who's number 8, Terry?
We got number 8, Tennessee. I don't know. I had them a little higher than this,
Beat
honestly.
Alabama. I had them right about here, I think. Beat
Okay.
Alabama, good for them. Rocky Top game. They've got a pretty good schedule, favorable on the way out, with the
They're
exception of
at
Georgia.
Georgia. That's a tough one. At Vandy is, I
And
got
look,
to tell you, Tennessee at Vandy this year.
If Vandy wins, you'll never hear the end of it because that'd be
Oh, my
Alabama
goodness.
and Tennessee in the same
Oh,
season.
wow. They got a bye week this week before Kentucky.
Yep,
Hopefully, Kentucky's pissed off because they just got beat by Auburn, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
very true.
Number 7, Clemson.
And they've been on a roll since that first loss, and it was an
They
ugly
have.
loss. They got whipped by Georgia, and they got
But
whipped by that Georgia defense as much as anything.
but we've seen that Georgia plays up to the tough games, and I think they did that here, and that loss looks a lot better this week than it did last week.
Yep. And as long as they keep winning, it doesn't matter.
And then they've got Louisville coming up on the 2nd. Um, Miami played close with Louisville. We'll see what Clemson does. It'll be good to see what, because there is no Clemson Miami game in the season.
Yep.
So that may be our ACC championship game, but we got other teams in the ACC like Pittsburgh that are sitting
Still
there winning
undefeated.
football games.
Yeah.
So we can't really say that. We'll have to see how it shakes out. Number 6, Miami, undefeated. And they got their rivalry with Florida State coming up here. They're favored by quite a bit here, but I don't know. Can Florida State get up for Miami? That's the question.
I
They've
will
got
save it.
talent.
I will save my comments about Florida State for when we get there because we'll be there a minute. Yeah, Miami is probably not a top 5 football team in my mind. You look at who they've played and where they're going. I mean, look, it's not just hating the U. There's 2 losses on this schedule that, I mean, they lost the game to Virginia Tech. They
Yeah,
lost to Cal. Um, they had help, and so they're not gonna. All the help in the world ain't gonna get Florida State a win this weekend, though. So let's move on to number 5, Terry. Who's number 5 this week?
number 5 is Texas.
Yeah.
Drops from number 1 to number 5 this week after Georgia put it on them pretty good, and they're going to Vandy this week.
And look at Vanderbilt's schedule. We just said it: Tennessee, Alabama, Texas. I mean, we joke about Vandy being Vandy,
Right?
but they playing everybody. Texas is going to crush Vanderbilt, though. It's
They should.
yeah. I mean,
If
it's
they
going to
don't,
be
then we were severely wrong about
correct. Yeah. At number 4,
it. Number 4 is Penn State. This is a team. It's like, where do we put Penn State? They keep winning, but they haven't really. What's their best win so far? They barely
USC,
beat USC. I
Illinois.
guess
Illinois is their best win.
they
Illinois is
did
their
beat
best win.
Illinois pretty good. That's probably their best game.
That's their best win. And the reason I say that's their best win is but they did do it in Happy Valley.
Right?
But Illinois is still a top 25 team, and we know they're a very good football team. So,
They are.
and by the way, this reminds me, Timmy C's joining us next week because Ohio State plays Penn State 11-2. So we will be joined by Timmy C of Filter Free Popcast for next week's show. I
All right.
probably should remind him. Anyway,
He'll be like, "What are you talking about? I
Yeah,
didn't
the
say
game
that."
you picked, homie. Um, who's next, Terry? Who's number 3?
Number
Pretty sure,
3 is
yeah.
Ohio State at 5-1. 1 point loss to Oregon. They've got Nebraska coming up next week, like you talked about.
Yep. Yeah, the Buckeyes are a good football team, and
And they got a week to rest.
they got a
Week to
week to
rest
rest
coming
and
in.
recoup. But so did Nebraska, and they laid an egg, and so did Indiana, and they played perfect. So how you handle the bye week matters, and how you come off that 1 point loss to the now number 1 football team in the country. You know, at least in the AP poll. Who's number 2, Terry?
Number
Is
2
it
is going to
Georgia?
be
Yeah,
Georgia. Yeah,
Georgia. They got quality wins. They got Clemson, Kentucky, Texas. No offense about Auburn. And actually, Kentucky, who knows if that's going to be a quality win by the time it's all said and done. Quality loss to Alabama in that you spotted them 28 before you decided to start playing football. Um,
it's crazy because Mississippi State played them a closer game than Texas did
yep. And they got
on the road.
Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, UMass, Georgia Tech. So we figured Florida was going to be a roll. That may not be the case. And we know Ole Miss and Tennessee are going to come to play Georgia. So
That's right.
we'll see what that
Tough games
defense can do.
ahead.
But that week off comes at a good time for them, to be
It
honest,
does.
because it's right mid-season. Let them
Right after that
reset.
Texas game,
They beat the shit out of each other Saturday
oh
night.
yeah,
So,
definitely, definitely.
so
You need to rest up here.
no. And
All
number
right, and the number
one,
1 team obviously is Oregon. They continue to
quack
roll. They
quack.
got Illinois this week, and this will be an interesting game. This is not going to be a whipping by any
You
means.
you said it. Since the Boise game, they have been on a roll. And even in
Yeah.
the Ohio State game, they never let Ohio State's presence or pressure, beat them. It was actually 32-31, Terry. You got a typo there on
Yeah,
Ohio
I
State, but
noticed that.
it's okay. But 35 to
There's
0,
got to be one in here.
they played your favorite that Friday night Big 10 game this weekend or this week. Purdue didn't have a chance. I mean, it was whatever. Illinois, a bigger physical football team, going to be a lot like Ohio State without all the pizzazz because they're going to run the ball. They're going to control the clock. They're going to use play action. It's going to be a great football game. And then you can see the rest of the schedule, not necessarily an easy way out, depending on which versions of 3 of those teams show up.
That's right. Michigan, they can come and play some defense at least. Offense
Maryland can
on
play
first.
when they want to, apparently.
Right. In Wisconsin,
Yep.
they're a tough team.
Yep.
Was Washington? I don't know. They've just kind of gone away. They lost all their players and their coach.
And their coach. And that matters.
Let me run it down. Number 10, LSU. Number 9, Indiana. Number 8, Tennessee. Number 7, Clemson. Number 6, Miami. Number 5, Texas. Number 4, Penn State. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 2, Georgia. And the number 1 team this week is Oregon. And let's
Yep.
move on to week 9. And here's the games we care about. Friday, very late at night, 10:30. Boise State at UNLV. This is pretty interesting here. Boise favored by 3.5.
UNLV plays great defense. They lost their quarterback. They lost a running back. Doesn't seem to matter. They're still winning football games. I like Boise and their running game, though. If you can control the clock, you can wear the defense out, you can establish a line of scrimmage. That's all the rushing game really requires. Boise, to me, should be the team to take this one, Terry. But again, UNLV, the Rebels are very, very good defensively, and we'll see what they can do. But that running back of Boise State is unconscious with what he does. So I'm taking Boise, and I'll take him by a touchdown.
I think I'll take Boise by 10. I just don't think UNLV has it to compete with that running game.
And that's
What?
what does it for me. They're so good between the tackles and in space running that ball. He is so good right now. He's what, 1,200 yards, I think.
Yeah, I don't know what I mean, he went over 1,000 a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure where he's at
So
now.
yeah, he's probably higher than that then. But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
very, very good running back. Anyway, Nebraska, Ohio State in the horseshoe in Columbus, 108,000. Nebraska's going to lose this game by 24 points. But for the at least, but for the exercise here, Huskers by a field goal because Ohio State is going to overlook them and Nebraska is going to play the perfect game. Nebraska by 3 because for my fans that love me so much, I will never change. Ever, ever, ever.
So last week, when I picked Nebraska, and then we had to pick the Auburn game, you picked against Auburn, and you said, "I appreciate you picking Nebraska, but I'm not going to pick Auburn." I assure you that I'm not picking Nebraska here. Ohio State by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. And that's the real pick. But I'm never going to change because everybody knows 1995 touchdown Tommy, thanks to the media, and Ohio State got screwed out of the Heisman that was rightfully his to Eddie George. Eddie George is a great running back. He was not Tommy Frazier. And I've held a grudge for, nearly 30 years. And I
Oh
am
yeah,
not changing tonight. So anyway. Notre Dame, Terry versus Navy. Notre Dame favored by 16.
16
Um,
seems big to me, honestly.
go.
I know
You're
Notre
first this
Dame's
time. Go
good.
ahead.
I
Yeah.
mean, Navy's undefeated,
Mm-hmm.
and Notre Dame is favored by 16. And these games tend to be close. 16 seems huge. But I think Notre Dame does win this game by a touchdown.
We're agreeing a lot, but I'm not going to be a fool and say Navy. I think Marcus Freeman's defense is very, very good. I
Yeah.
think the offense of Notre Dame has come along. 16 seems like a lot, but I'm going to say they do it. I will take 16, Notre
Mm,
Dame, because of the athletic disparity in the two football teams. That's what it's going to come down to.
okay.
Just there's too much talent in Notre Dame's what I'm saying. Just way too much talent. Despite the fact it's an away game, just way too much talent.
All right. Let's move on to the SEC. We've got
Oh my
Oklahoma
god.
at
Fuck
Ole
Oklahoma
Miss.
at this point. Ole Miss by 28.
Yeah,
Big game lane.
I'm with you.
Reset. I mean,
This is not a
the
big game at this point
and this
at
was going to
all.
be a great football game. You and I circled on the calendar. We're
Yeah,
like,
it
yeah,
should have been.
Oklahoma, Ole Miss. I'm taking Ole Miss by 4 touchdowns because
Oklahoma ain't got it.
they ain't got it. They burned the red shirt on their quarterback, Jackson Arnold. Their other quarterback turned the ball over 3 times against South Carolina. Ole Miss is still a very good offensive-minded football team, and Oklahoma is so bad on offense they're going to force some turnovers. Ole Miss huge because it's at home. That's the other thing, Terry. This is in Oxford, and those crazy drunk ass people are going to be loud, loud, loud. So I'm taking Ole Miss big time, big time.
I'll go Ole Miss by 20.
I'm going 28. Seriously, 4 touchdowns. Give him. Illinois versus Oregon at Oregon in Eugene, number 1 team in the country. Terry favored by
One
one
and a
and a
half.
half at
It looked
home.
low to me. At home. I
At
know.
home.
I can double check this, but I mean,
This is
this
the
is what
team
I
that
saw.
this is the team that beat Ohio State in Eugene. Illinois coming, bigger physical team. They're going to run the ball, going to play sound defense. Got a great coach who knows how to win football games. Um, but I don't think he's there yet. I think in a close one, Oregon wins. So I'm going to take the Ducks by 5.
Okay, let me double check this line here.
It
That's
just
supposed to
seems,
be 21 and a half.
is it?
It is. Yes.
Well,
Terry
I'm still
screws up sometimes. He didn't have a
no,
lot of time this
now
year.
that's disrespectful. Illinois is going to play them inside of a score. I'm confident with my prediction. Oregon wins, but it's by 5. It ain't going to be 21 and a half. That's a big number, Terry. One
It
and a
is a
half
big
was too
number.
low, but 21 and a half is huge.
I'll go 10. I got Oregon by 10 here.
I mean, it is in Eugene. I get that. But Illinois is a really good, fundamentally sound football team. I'm going I'm going by 5. Give it to the Ducks. Quack quack. Again, we're
So I
agreeing
do
too much.
so I do deserve criticism for screwing these up, but
Yeah, every
I
once in a
spent a lot
while.
of time to
Listen,
cram these in.
Missouri drew Alabama in Tuscaloosa following the loss to Tennessee. You are not an Alabama fan, but what are
No.
your thoughts on the Tide this weekend?
I think Missouri Auburn had Missouri. I know there was the quarterback injury. I just don't think Missouri is as good as we thought they were. And I know that Alabama is down a little bit, but I think Alabama by 17 in Tuscaloosa.
Damn, we agree way too much. I think Alabama's coming for blood. Give him. I'll take
We've said
24.
that before, though,
I'll
and it
take them
didn't
by
happen.
24 because Missouri is not the team they should have been early in the year that we expected.
All right, Florida State, Miami. I think we're going to agree on this one too, because I don't know which way you could go. I don't. 17.5 point favorites, the Hurricanes. I don't know. I don't know what to feel about this one. Miami is undefeated, but like we keep talking about, they keep getting help from the refs. But does Florida State even care enough to make this a good game?
Florida State doesn't play well on the offensive line. They don't play well on the defensive line. They had 4 turnovers against Duke's defense, and Duke didn't have the offensive firepower to make them pay for it. Do you know who has the offensive firepower to make them pay for those mistakes, Terry? The University of Miami. This is at Miami. This is a 7 o'clock kick. This is an old rivalry Florida State has owned at times. Dave will probably tell me that Miami has always beat them, but I don't think that's true. Um, I'm going Miami huge. Give me the Hurricanes by 30 because I ain't said it yet tonight. 30 points. Hurricanes are going to decimate the Seminoles because the Seminoles are that bad and are going to give Miami help they don't need.
I've seen Miami play, and I've seen how their trend goes. I think Florida State takes an early lead, and I think Miami ends up winning by 13 points after having to come back.
Okay.
All right, back up to the Big Ten. We got Penn State at Wisconsin. Penn State favored on the road by 10.5. I'll say I think Penn State by 17.
Camp Randall Stadium is a very difficult place to win. Penn State needs the signature win. Wisconsin isn't quite what we thought they were. They've already lost their quarterback this year. How many did you say?
17.
I think that's too many. I'm going to go with 10, but I'm going to go with Penn State because the defense of Penn State is legitimate. And they've had a week off. They've had a week to prepare for Wisconsin. They know what Whiskey's going to do. Um, but it'll be a great game. And it's not, believe it or not, Terry, the game day game. None of those are. Indiana versus Washington is college game day game of the week.
Interesting.
So
Is it
LSU at
where
A&M.
is it? Is it at Washington or Indiana? I can't remember.
I don't remember. Oh no. LSU at A&M. Another game that could go either way. But I really need Mike Elko and A&M to beat LSU at the home of the 12th man there in Aggie country. Please.
I
I'm
don't
ta-
think
I,
LSU's got the defense, but if you're about to pick, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say I don't think LSU's got the defense. I don't think that they can win in College Station because that is a very difficult place to win. This is not the same A&M team that lost to Notre Dame either. Their
No.
quarterback is back. He's playing well. Their defense is very good and will be as long as Mike Elko's the head coach. I'm taking A&M by 10.
I hate when another SEC team that we thought was dropping proves that they aren't. And that's what's happening with Texas A&M. They sit at the top of the standings, and I have to admit that another team is in front of my Auburn Tigers. What'd you pick them by?
10. I think home
A&M
field
by
advantage.
4.
I think home field advantage. Camp Randall, Kyle
Yeah.
Field. I think it's worth 7 points. Honestly,
I'm going to say A&M by 4. I think
but it'll.
LSU is probably a little better than we give them credit for, so that's why I'm going to drop it down to 4.
But make no mistake about this, guys. Anyone listening to the sound of my voice, this is going to be a football game.
It is.
This one right here will be a football game. Last
All
one,
right.
Terry. I'm going to go first. It's
Go first,
University of
please.
Kentucky and it's Auburn. And it's which Auburn and Kentucky show up are going to determine the outcome of this football game.
Can we make
Um,
this 3 quarters? We're good if
yeah.
we just play 3 quarters.
And look, I trust in Mark Stoops' defense. They're going to make it very difficult for Auburn to win. Um, and it is at Kentucky, but the ball has eventually got to bounce Auburn's way. So I'm going to take your Tigers by a touchdown over
Okay.
Kentucky at Kentucky because the luck has got to change for Auburn at some point. And that's really my rationale because
It's got to. One of these games, I mean, they are in every one of these games,
something
every
has
single
to
one of them.
break. That's what I'm saying. Something, I said luck, but fortune or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
It has to go the right way for once. And I'm going to say this is the game it finally happens.
I think somehow, even though we have respect for Kentucky's defense,
Always.
somehow Auburn hits 2 big pass plays on them, both touchdowns, ends up winning by 4 points.
Yeah, I think this is a low scoring affair.
Yeah, I'm looking 20 to 13 or something. 20
Yeah, I
to
don't think you're
16,
shooting the
something like
lights out
that.
on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, Terry, 17-13,
Yeah.
17-14,
Right.
21-17. That's probably about as high as it's going to get, 3 scores, from either team.
Yes, and we do care about Pitt and Syracuse, Bober. They just didn't quite make the list. Why they
Now,
didn't make the list, I don't know. Because here's let me know. Let me tell you. There's a website that has all the lines, and they pick 10 every week, and that's my starting point. And I go, are Auburn and Nebraska both on this? And lately, Auburn's not been on it because who gives a crap about the Auburn game? But um, we pull something off of there. So blame them. If they had put Pitt versus Syracuse on there, I would have probably used it.
right,
So that's our
right.
week 9 games that we preview for next week. Let's talk about the pick 'em I have now, based on ESPN's point system, pulled into a tie, but I'm calling it number 2. Both Brian and I have 45 wins. He only has 32 losses. But look at Al's dad. Allison, you have got to tell this man he needs to vote because he is blowing everybody away by win percentage. 44-25, but he's in 3rd place because he keeps forgetting to vote.
Damn it, George. Get it
My
together.
goodness. And Bober is not on the list this week. Come on, Bober. You got to pick it up.
Yeah, well, I am sucking at this, which is okay. I don't care. Somebody has to lose. I mean, Nick Saban, the greatest college football coach of all time, lost the pick'ems to his wife, and she beat him by 3. So, it happens.
All right. Is there
Ms.
anything
Terry.
else? Did we just almost finish a show here? I'm trying to keep up with it.
Oh
Looking at
yeah,
the notes. I think we've done this.
and we're only
Another
like
good.
we're only 7 minutes over, and Bober is right.
That's
This
nothing.
is something I will conclude on this thought, Terry, because it's becoming a theme. Um, there's a lot of upsets happening in college
Yeah.
football these days. A lot of upsets. I mean, I thought Texas was the most complete game in football or team in football based on what we had seen, and that defense of Georgia gave them all they wanted. And the reason I keep coming back to the defense of Georgia is because
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning gave them the ball 3 times.
Yeah.
They turned the ball over, or
And they
not,
have not
or
done that.
they did 4 times. They had to turn up. What I meant that actually applies. What I meant was that the quarterback. I just lost his name.
Yours?
No, for Georgia.
Beck?
Carson Beck. Carson Beck gave Texas the ball 3 times is what I actually meant,
Okay.
and the defense still 30-15.
Okay.
You gave them 3 more opportunities, and you lost the ball. So, anyway, the point still holds. Georgia forces 7 turnovers and rescues their offense. That's all defense. So, and you know my thing, Terry. I love defense. Defense wins
Defense and run the
championships.
football.
Yep. Yep.
And I
Exactly.
got to tell you, college football is changing. There are a lot of different team names in the rankings right now, and we can thank the transfer portal, and we can thank guys not wanting to sit for too long. That's why we thought Texas was going to be a cut above everybody because Arch Manning was willing to sit behind Ewers, but the balance is there that's never been there before in college football. There is a balance of power, and you're not going to have these dominating teams dominating for years on end. It's just not going to happen, and it makes it better. And we got a 12-team playoff this year. It's going to be very open. We're not going to know what's going to happen like we think we did for the last several years. Dominance is just not going to happen for the same team over and over again.
Well, we predicted one team make it out of the Big 12. I know I did.
Yeah,
But BYU's undefeated, as is Iowa State.
right.
Both very good football teams. And the teams you and I chose based on experience, players, and coaches are in the middle or the bottom of the damn standings right now.
I'm pretty sure he cut his mullet, and I think that's what caused it. I'm
Kind of like
blaming that.
kind of like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when the lion loses the mane.
Exactly.
Well,
Or Samson.
yeah, him too. I wonder if Delilah's been around old Mike Gundy. I mean, we
Oh,
know he
wow,
likes
let's not
we
put any rumors out there.
we know he likes to have a beer. Well, he's a man.
That's right,
He's
and he'll drive home.
That's so funny. Who hasn't had 3 or 4? Mike, you're not supposed to say that.
Oh, that
Um,
reminds me of the Jay Cutler story. Yeah, we got the same thing going on with Jay Cutler.
yeah. Is anyone surprised by Jay Cutler though?
Nah.
It will be something when Alabama does not make it. Bober is such a hater.
But I
He
mean,
is
it is
such a
interesting though.
hater.
They open up the
God.
playoffs, and we pretty much said Alabama will never not make it, but here we are.
Hmm.
We'll see what happens the rest of the year, though, because everybody in the SEC has a loss. So who knows what happens next?
Yeah. Well, I think personally, I think Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas are your 4 best football teams. And I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close. I understand Miami is undefeated and Penn State is undefeated, but those 4 top teams have so many. If they're the 12th seed, Bober, they can make it.
We'll see what happens.
2 losses, they have no reason to make it. Well, they also have to play LSU and Auburn and Ole Miss and Oklahoma. There's a lot of football left to be played. And a 2-loss Alabama team is still better than 50 or 60 or 70 other football teams without even trying.
Well, speaking of the teams being ranked that aren't usually ranked, and this has been talked about by a lot of people, Army and Navy play their rivalry game a week after the playoff is set.
Yep.
This was always kind of a thing in the BCS with the computers because they set the field for the BCS before that game. And from what I understand, Army Navy is not a conference game because it's too late to be a conference game. It's crazy, but it is. I mean, that's what sets this apart. I'm not against it being set apart just because of what they are, but it's very interesting because if Army and Navy end up undefeated, both of them undefeated, that's that's an interesting dilemma for that game to be at that point because that game could factor into to the conference champion that gets ranked in the for the 12-team field. Maybe
It
they play each other in the conference championship game and
it
then play
could.
again.
Yeah, it could. Um,
Craziness.
yeah, there's a lot of insanity in college football right now. That's kind of what I was saying. And I mean, I appreciate Bober's sentiment about Alabama. I really do. I just think Alabama is such a good football team. But they're not playing like it. And that's the ultimately what really matters too. You have
It's
all
because
this
he wore a
talent.
T-shirt on the sideline.
You have all the talent in the world. You still have to execute, you know. I mean, Clemson got dog walked, and I don't know that anybody said louder to me, God, this isn't a Clemson football team. Next thing you know, they're reeling off win after win after win after win.
Right.
That doesn't mean they'll make it out of the first round of the playoff, but they'll certainly got the ability to beat Miami or Pitt, um, or whoever is there a third undefeated team still? No, just those two. But anyway, doesn't matter.
SMU has one loss.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun to because this back half of the season, Terry, is when stuff a lot of times gets real good. For instance, we're gonna see, you know, after Nebraska takes that ass whooping from Ohio State, now that we're off the pick'ems, because that's what's gonna happen. Uh, I've been calling it all year,
I
but
get it. I get it.
they got Penn State, you know, and
Yeah,
that's gonna be in Happy Valley. That's a big deal. And they've got to play Indiana, which apparently isn't just a
that's a
win.
tough one because you know
Yeah,
what? Google him. He wins.
he wins, and he meant it. But you gotta love the hubris there. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I respect it. I'm not mad at it. So anyway, we're probably 15 minutes over. So we probably should wrap her up. Thank you all.
Oh, we
Bober's
have
joining us.
to.
You guys have heard us reference this Mike Bober guy from Pittsburgh a few times this tonight. He will be joining us as well in November. Such a good fan, and we appreciate all that Mike does, even
Definitely.
as we rib him on the show, and call him an old man who remembers, you know, quarters and pinball and all that, along with Palm Water Dave, so who's
All right.
already
Well,
been on.
thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, everybody that voiced their opinions. Dave Miller, Alex Wheaton, Mike Bober. That's the ones I see on the chat right now. I don't know if they're all still here. Thanks everybody for voting. Please continue to vote. This voting is going to get tougher and tougher every single week, and we appreciate the participation. George, pick your teams this week. That's the only person I'm going to remind. But anyway, as I always say, be a champ this week in everything that you do. See you next time, everybody.